Hello guys and welcome back to Planet 40k. We've got another list build video for you today. Now it does appear that we've missed doing a list for the Cult of the Cryptek Army of Renown. For some reason we didn't get to do that one. I'm not sure what happened there, but we're going to do that one for today. We're going to do a 1000 point Cult of the Cryptek Army of Renown list. So yeah, in fact before we do guys, little plug to one of our newer channels. Planet 40k has got a Tyranids channel, so you'll find that in the description down below if you haven't already. And just subscribe, and if you're into Tyranids, then fantastic, join the channel. Or if you're thinking about doing Tyranids, yeah, also get involved. Right, so without further ado, let's get on with the list. So we're of course using the Arks of Omen detachment because that's the current chapter approved book that we are using. With the Cult of the Cryptek, the benefits are as follows, so let's get into that first. So all units are going to gain Cult of the Cryptek keyword. Crypteks have got the Noble keyword for the purposes of command protocols, not really that relevant there. We gain some new warlord traits, Arcana and Stratagems, and we gain the Tomb Guardian's ability, see below. So what is the Tomb Guardian's ability? We don't gain a dynastic code throughout the army, so yeah, we're not going to get any dynasty buffs there. But instead of that, we're going to get a +1 to our attacks characteristics of all models in the units, and we're going to get to re-roll reanimation protocols rolls of a 1, which Necron warriors naturally get, but we're going to have that army-wide. Now of course there are some restrictions which we can only include the following units, so we can include Cryptek units, Canoptic units, Necron warriors, and the fortification, which is Convergence of Dominion. They're the only options that we've got within this Cult of the Cryptek Army of Renown. And all units must be from the same dynasty. We don't get the buff just for the keyword's sake, they've all got to be from the same dynasty. Right, so here we go, let's get on to the HQ and Warlord for this list. And I never leave home without a Technomancer, so we're going with a 70 point Technomancer. Now what we're going to do with this Technomancer, we're going to upgrade it. Well, it's not an upgrade really, the Canoptic Cloak is free, so we're going to be able to heal D3 lost wounds to a nearby unit. Also the Staff of Light is going to be what we're going to be equipping it with in terms of its war gear. Now in fact let's take that a bit further with the relics. We're going to upgrade that Staff of Light to a Voltaic Staff, which is of course melee as well as a shooting attack. 18-inch range, assault 4, strength 6, -2 AP and 2 damage with exploding 6s. And in melee, well we're not really going to use it in melee, but if you do, +1 to the strength, -2 AP, 2 damage. I don't want to get my Technomancer in melee, but if you do, that's what it is. So we're going to also add a Warlord trait to our Technomancer, which is the Codifier of Lesser Beings. So this is done in our command phase. You select a Cult of the Cryptek unit within 6 inches of the Warlord, and one enemy unit that's visible to the Warlord. And until the start of the next command phase, each time that friendly Cult of the Cryptek unit makes an attack against that enemy unit, they're going to add 1 to the wounds roll, which I think is actually pretty big in fact. Adding 1 to the wound roll, yeah, you'll see when we do the tactics later on why that is so good. So what else are we going to add to the Technomancer's war gear? We're going to add a piece of Cryptic Arcana, and we're going to go with the failsafe Overcharger, which is 25 points. This is going to allow for additional attacks with our Canoptic units that are within 9 inches, and if they're monsters you get D3 extra attacks per model. If they're not, it's just 1 extra attack per model. So that's the Technomancer. He's coming in at a total of 95 points because of that Arcana, and also he's costing us 2 command points because of the Warlord trait as well as the Relic. So that is the Technomancer. In fact, let's go on to what we're going to do with the Technomancer to begin. So he's got his Rites of Reanimation ability, of course, so we can be bringing back a model in a unit. He can also be healing D3 lost wounds, as we said, with the Canoptic Cloak, as well as a fly keyword, in fact, and a 10-inch movement, which we did forget about. Having that +1 to wound roll for a unit that's in close proximity is going to be very good as well, so that's a little hint of what we're going to be doing with that. And the failsafe Overcharger and the Voltaic Staff for extra stuff. Yeah, so why not? Okay, so let's get on to the second HQ within the list. And I had to keep this one as cheap as possible because of points. I originally had a second Technomancer here, but I just could not afford the points. So we've gone with the Plasmancer. Now I don't normally take a Plasmancer, but with this list it does fit. So 65 points for the Plasmancer, and what have we got with him? So for the war gear, of course, you've got the Plasmic Lance. You don't need to, there's no upgrades there, that is what it is. It's pretty good at shooting. And we're also going to add a 1 command point relic, which is the Veil of Darkness relic. Now we will need to use the Dynastic Heirlooms stratagem in order to take this second relic within the list, but he's going to have the Veil of Darkness relic, so him as well as a core unit can pop across the battlefield any turn you like, as long as you're more than 9 inches away from any models. So the Plasmancer is going to throw out a fair amount of mortal wounds with his Living Lightning ability and his other ability, so he's doing out a lot of mortal wounds. Now he is going to have a unique role within this list, but you have to wait for, well, the end of the list before you actually get to know what we're going to do with this. But yeah, that Plasmic Lance, as mentioned, is fairly decent in shooting. It's assault D3, it's 18-inch in fact, assault D3, strength 7, minus 3 AP and 2 damage a pop. So yeah, you could get rid of a Space Marine model for example in one single turn, maybe 2 if you're lucky. But with the mortal wounds on top of that, he should get his points back and then he's going to do something else too. So that's the HQ selections from this list. Next we get into the elite selections. I've got 3 models, which are one single unit of Cryptek spiders. They're 60 points a model. Now of course we're going to be upgrading these with the particle beamers. That's 5 points per beamer, you've got 2 beamers per spider. That makes 30 points in total just for the particle beamers alone. And that will give us a complete total of 210 points for the 3 Cryptek spiders. Now these are going to be going with that Technomancer, as you probably already guessed by now. D3 additional attacks per Cryptek spider. Then you're going to get 1 additional attack for the Cult of the Cryptek ability. So that's going to be 6 attacks plus D3 attacks per spider at strength 8, minus 3 AP, and the damage being 2. And the beamers are also pretty good. That's going to be 18 shots at strength 5. And remember with the Warlord trait, everything coming out from the spiders is going to have a +1 to the wound rolls. So that includes all the particle beamer shots as well as the vicious claws in melee. Now I will be looking to use the rites of reanimation ability on the Cryptek spiders. And I'm going to of course be healing them D3 lost wounds with that Cryptek cloak as well from the Technomancer. Now there are some extra buffs that we could use with the spiders because there's 2 additional stratagems that have been added to the Cult of the Cryptek. The first one is aggression overrides, 1 command point used on the Cryptek spiders in the command phase. You're going to add 2 to their movement characteristics, and also you're going to change their weapon skill to a 2+. This isn't a modifier, this isn't a +1 -1 situation, you're just changing the characteristic to a 2+. That's actually the reason why I didn't take the Master of the Cult Warlord trait, which is a +1 to the attacks hit rolls, because if I'm going to use this stratagem when they're in combat, they're going to already have a 2+ weapon skill anyway, so I don't need to bring them from a 4+ weapon skill to a 3+. I could just use this stratagem and still have the +1 to the wound roll as well. So that's the reason I've not gone for the Master of the Cult Warlord trait, and that's only 1 command point as well, which I think is really cheap. Now the other option I've got here is the Hyperdense Particle Beams. It's also 1 command point using the shooting phase on your particle beamers or particle casters, and it changes the AP from 0 AP to -2 AP. Again, I think that's really usable. Only 1 command point. You can actually use both of these stratagems at the same time within the same turn, and you're going to get a lot of output out of it. So that is the elite slots. As for the fast attack slots, the first unit is going to be 5 units. I keep saying 5 units. 5 models that are within a unit. Cryptek Scarabs, 15 points of Cryptek Scarab base. Now these things are going to be shielding my Cryptek spiders, of course. The spiders are also going to be bringing one back each turn, one that's previously been lost. So the Technomancer can bring back the spiders can bring back the scarabs. I mean, they could eventually go off and do their own thing if required, primary objectives, secondary objectives, but for the main bulk of the game, I want these guys screening my spiders. So they're going to be getting 5 attacks per base due to the Cult of the Cryptek ability, and they're just going to be an absolute nuisance for the opponent. Having 4 wounds a pop, yeah, I quite like them. Now, a secondary fast attack option here, we've got 3 models within a unit of Cryptek Scarabs. This is a 3-man unit this time, 15 points each, 45 points in total here. This group of 3, they're just there for scoring. Again, primary, secondaries. Now, I could opt to do the Deep Strike stratagem, which is a new stratagem for Cult of the Cryptek, which is the Swarm Descends. 1 command point, you could put your Scarab Swarm into Deep Strike using the Dimensional Translocation ability. So I may use that, although Strategic Reserves are also free now, so I could just pop them into reserves. But if I wanted to Deep Strike, I've got the option there. I mean, in bigger games, Deep Strike is probably a better option, but this is only 1k, so Strategic Reserves maybe just a better option. Let me come on to another fast attack option. Well, it's 2 here in fact, because we need 3 from 1 battlefield roll for the Arks of Omen detachment to be legal, and we've got 2 more here, 2 Tomb Sentinels. They're 110 points each. These are my anti-tank within the list. I don't like taking Cryptek Doomstalkers, I just think they're very unreliable. Unless you take 3 of them, but at 1k, I need my units to all be doing different things, whether it's primaries and secondaries. Having 3 just sort of staying in one place, I can't be doing that. So these are my anti-tank. They're not top tier, don't get me wrong, but at least the damage is quite reliable. It's 3 rather than D6. They can still move around and still fire their weapons as normal. And they've got that 10-inch movement as well, don't forget, which makes them pretty rapid, and getting onto primaries, then still firing the weapon, that's going to be useful to us. They're reasonably good in melee too. They're going to have 5 attacks at strength 7, -2 AP, 2 damage. Yeah, that's going to do a little bit of work. but they're also quite resilient with toughness 7 and 9 wounds, so they're just going to be a decent output, but also a little bit of a distraction unit as well. Only 110 points to go, not too bad. Oh, one other thing, they can also deep strike if we wanted to. Will I be deep striking them? Possibly, it just depends on the list, doesn't it? Depends on who I'm going up against and the mission, of course. So we've got a couple more units within the fast attack. We've got 2 identical units of Cryptek Wraiths at 105 points per unit. This is another couple of scoring units here, mainly for primaries this time. We need to be scoring some primary objectives with some units. They've got a bit more resiliency with their Wraith form 4+ invulnerable save. They can also be ignoring terrain as if they weren't there, other models as if they weren't there, so they can get into better positions going through models, especially if you're using, or if you're selecting like the secondary objective Ancient Machineries or Treasures of Aeons, and it's really guarded with a front line. These things can just go straight through them, no problem. So yeah, they've got lots of attacks. They've got the option of falling back and recharging so that they can fight first. But yeah, mainly used for primary holding. So that leaves me with 80 points, and you know where this is going already because of my 2,000 point list. We did the same thing. I'm going to be adding the fortification, the convergence of Dominion, 80 points. This is going to mainly be used for an anti-deep strike in our back lines, because of course as soon as a model comes in from deep strike, they need to be 9 inches away from any models, and this will count as an enemy model. Now they have the potential to be thrown into new locations with our Cryptek models. We've got 2 Cryptek in the list. We already know what the Technomancer's doing, but the Plasmancer, he'll be staying back and looking after these pillars. So with an action with the Plasmancer, he can throw this thing into strategic reserves, and then on your next turn it can pop out like it's deep striking more than 9 inches away from enemy models. Now this will be good for things such as behind enemy lines perhaps. Now it isn't always the case. You may not find a gap, especially at 1k. The map size is quite small after all, and if it's screened off well enough, you're not going to be able to do it. But even just having a backline defense for anti-deep strike, that's still worth it in my opinion for 80 points. Toughness 8, plenty of wounds, yeah, I like them. In fact, while we're speaking of the Plasmancer, he is taking the Veil of Darkness relic, don't forget, and these pillars are core. So within the same turn, if you see an opportunity where there is a 9-inch bubble that you can fit one of these pillars in as well as a Plasmancer, I'm going to be doing it straight away, because if there's a gap and I've got behind enemy lines, your opponent is going to be forced to deal with this pillar as well as the Plasmancer. So yeah, we've kind of already run through the tactics as we go this time, so I don't need to give you a summary of the tactics at the end. We kind of know roughly what we're doing with it. So then all that's really left is the secondaries. We'll get onto that now. So let's get into the secondary objectives that we're going to be selecting when using this list. Now first of all, I'm going to be choosing Treasures of Aeons. Now we don't have any objectives secured here, unfortunately. We don't really have an option for that, apart from Necron Warriors, but I don't really want Necron Warriors in this list. And they already re-rolled their reanimation rolls of a 1 anyway, so it feels a little bit redundant with Warriors, although they are a cheap troop unit, so we could have had them, but I didn't really want them. But we do have a lot of fast units that are quite resilient, and if our opponent does not want to leave their backlines for any reason, okay, we might not score very well with Treasures of Aeons if they don't do this. However, in theory, this should massively be beneficial to the primaries, because if they're not moving from their deployment zone, that means they're not coming into the no man's land to get those other primary objectives, which we can just suffocate and take over. Now, if we wanted to change this up, if you weren't feeling too comfortable with Treasures of Aeons, there's alternatives such as Assassination, Bring Them Down, Bring It Down, or No Prisoners. There are other alternatives that we could swap out Treasures of Aeons if you didn't want them. That's the first one. The second one, I've gone with Behind Enemy Lines. This is one of my favourite ones at this moment in time. We've got lots of quick units to get in behind enemy lines. We've got the potential of the Plasmancer throwing in one of those fortifications into the back lines. He's also got the Veil of Darkness relic, so he can do it within the same turn. We've got the Tomb Sentinels and the Cryptek Scarabs. There are potential ways of deep striking all of those units. We can also quicken the Cryptek Spiders up to 8-inch movement with the Stratagem. And we could even put the Cryptek Wraiths into reserves. I mean, we don't necessarily need to do that again because they're already moving quite quick. The board size is quite small, so we should be able to get into behind enemy lines, not a problem. But if you wanted to reserve them for the later rounds so they're not going to die, you could also do that too. And again, I'll give you some backup options in case you didn't really fancy behind enemy lines. If you're going up against Tau, Astra Militarum, and they're not moving from their back lines, optionally you could go with, say, Engage on all fronts, or maybe even Purge the Vermin. Now, I'm not a big fan of Purge the Vermin at the moment, but if you could get the Cryptek Spiders, the Cryptek Scarabs, as well as the Technomancer in the centre of the battlefield, at least you've defended that area to prevent your opponent from sticking on one unit to deny all 4 of the quarters. So yeah, that's an option if you didn't want to take behind enemy lines. As for the third one, I'm going to go with Ancient Machineries. I wasn't sure about this one, but it does at the same time make sense. We're playing a Cryptek list here. Pretty much everything in this list, apart from the 2 characters and the fort, can do this action for Ancient Machineries because they're all Cryptek. Now it is going to go hand in hand with the Treasure of Aeons because of the objectives, as well as the primaries of course. The only bad point is we're not objective secured, so we don't score this within our own turn. We have to wait till our next command phase in order to score this, which could be a little bit of a problem, but that's exactly why I've gone with more resilient units within this list. So that is the secondaries. Let's move on to what command protocol I will be using all game. Now there are a couple of options that I've got here. I've eliminated 4 of them, but the 2 options that I'm going to be flipping a coin over at this moment are either the Protocol of Sunstorm or the Protocol of Undying Legions. And for this video, I'm going to go with the Sunstorm. The reason for the Sunstorm is you get the +1 movement if you're using Directive 1, or Directive 2, you can do the action and still shoot. Now you're not going to be using that on that many of our units. You've only really got the Tomb Sentinels, haven't you? Oh, as well as the Cryptek Spires, of course. So that's 3 units within the list that could do the action and still shoot if needed. And I think it's going to be quite important for Ancient Machineries. Now the other alternative option, if you didn't want to take this Protocol of Sunstorm, is the Protocol of Undying Legions, getting double living metal for a round, or every round, or doing the single reroll for your reanimation protocols rolls. Now bear in mind that we already reroll 1s, so you're now only going to be rerolling 2s, 3s and 4s, which gives you a better chance of actually bringing models back. So yeah, I'm on the fence with which one to take, but for the sake of the video, I'm going to go with the Protocol of Sunstorm. So guys, that is my 1000 point Cults of the Cryptek list from the Army of Renown. Sorry this was a little bit late, I just completely forgot about it, but yeah. So guys, other than that, all that is left to say is thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.